Welcome to this web series, The Frugal Mindset, also known as Money and the Responsible Christian. This is the 6th episode of our Frugal Mindset Money Skills section of the webinar, but this is our 16th episode overall, and in this episode we're going to discuss financial priorities and how to get there, also known as have a plan. In episode 11 we talked about the 4 frugal questions. In episode 12, we talked about the 3 need questions. Then in episodes 13 and 14, we reviewed the personal balance sheet and the personal cash flow analysis. And then in episode 15, we talked about how to use those tools to start moving in the direction you want to go. And we also talked about a potential saving analysis form. Now in this episode, we're talking about financial priorities and how to get there, also called have a plan. There's 2 Bible verses I want to discuss with you here. First of all, Proverbs 21, verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. And Proverbs 19:21. Many are the plans in the minds of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. To get where you want to go, you first have to take stock of your financial situation, and then you have to decide what your financial priorities should be. And what are financial priorities for one person won't necessarily be financial priorities for another. It's very much individualistic, but there are some common threads that we can definitely discuss. And these are my suggestions for some of the financial priorities you may consider. First of all, generally, it's a good financial priority to give to God's work. Tithing or some version of tithing is definitely an excellent step. And even when my wife and I were very, very poor, we tithed. The 4th episode of this webinar was about tithes and offerings. And I'm not going to repeat it here, but you can go back and check that out if you want. The second priority generally would be if your employer has a 401 match, where they will match 100% or 125% of whatever you contribute. Almost always that's a really good thing to do, because where else do you make double your money immediately? Now I had a guy who worked for me. He was a very good lawyer, and he'd made some bad financial decisions in the past, and he was older and he was getting close to retirement age, and he was working as an employee. And he refused to take advantage of the 100% 401 match we had at the firm. And I thought Terry was nuts, but Terry was nuts about a lot of things. So he was a very good lawyer. The next priority I would suggest that you have is get out of all bad debt. And what's good and bad debt we'll talk about in our next episode a little bit. But certainly high credit card debt is almost always bad debt. Another priority would be to create an emergency fund for yourself. Experts suggest at least 3 months, sometimes as much as 6 months of living expense as an emergency fund. That certainly can be critical if you lose your job or you have an unexpected situation, you have an emergency. It's really nice to have an emergency fund. The next 3 priorities I'm going to discuss, they're really kind of all together, and I can't prioritize them because they're all about equally important. But one would be create blank funds. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if you have to save because you need a new car, or you want to save for a down payment for a house, or save for some other purpose, but you need to have funds. When I was a child, I remember my parents had a little metal strong box, and they used to have envelopes in that strong box, and they had envelopes for all kinds of categories. They had envelopes for food, they had envelopes for vacation, they had envelopes for clothing, they had envelopes for giving. They had their little envelope for everything, and they would get their paychecks and they would put their cash in the envelopes, and that was the way they saved. Well, nowadays, I don't think too many of us have envelopes anymore, but the concept is the same. And I don't know if you need to have separate funds for everything. You certainly can, but you certainly need to have funds set aside. You need to have blank fund set aside for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And that's in addition to the emergency fund, which you shouldn't be touching routinely. This is the fund for the various things you want to save for so you can buy. Whether you're going to buy a new car or buy a new used car, or you're going to buy a house and you need money for the down payment, or you want to buy, you name it. You need a new dishwasher, you want this or you want that. So when we talk about the blank funds, it's just whatever you in your financial priorities want to be saving for. And the next one is to contribute to your retirement funds, whether it be an IRA, a 401, a Roth, whatever type of retirement funds are appropriate for you. The sooner you start putting money into them, the younger you do it, the better off you're going to be in the long run. You don't want to be that person facing retirement and all you've got is your Social Security. That's a rough place to be. And the last area is completely personal. It's whatever makes sense for you. When we're talking about the 4 frugal questions, is it really worth it to you? And there's all kinds of things that might be worth it to you that you would want to save for. But remember, unless it's a need, then you should not be spending money on it unless you have all of the money beforehand. So that's what you're saving for. You're saving to have the money to buy the things you need and the things you want. And then the last area is to give more money to worthy causes. If you can get your financial boat well in order, you have an opportunity to make a difference by giving more money to worthy causes. So what's the magic thing you can do to make sure you have money to contribute to all these things we've just talked about? What's the magic bullet? Well, folks, I'm sorry to tell you there isn't one. There really are just 3 options. You either have to earn more money, spend less money, or the third one is to sell stuff to generate income. But selling stuff to generate money only helps if you're paying off debt. It doesn't help if you're just buying more stuff, especially stuff you don't need. Now let's talk about each one of these a little bit in turn. Earning more money. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways you could potentially earn more money. You potentially could get a job earning more money. You could potentially go to school so you qualify for a job earning more money. You could work more hours. You could potentially work a side gig, some kind of temporary job, typically for a period of time just to help get your financial boat in order. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of side hustles you can do. You can drive a Lyft car or do delivery or do babysitting, do lawn cleanup, hang up Christmas lights. There's just a lot of different things you could potentially do to earn additional money in a side gig. If you have a home, potentially could rent a room. So these side gigs are generally only for a season to help you get your financial house in order. All right, let's talk about the second thing, spending less money. Well, we've given you all kinds of tools to do that. First, we have the 4 frugal questions and the 3 need questions, and let's review those here quickly. The 4 frugal questions are 1, can I afford it? And can I afford it means you can pay cash for the whole amount and it won't affect your other financial priorities. Is it appropriate? Broad question. Whatever factors would go into whether or not it's appropriate should be considered there. Is this the best route? And once you've saved up the money and it's appropriate, and this is the best value, it's the best route, then is it still worth it to you to spend your hard-earned money? And if you answer yes to all 4 of those questions, then feel free to buy whatever it is we're talking about, whether it be a can of corn or a Ferrari. If your answer to any one of those questions is no, then you should not be spending money on it unless you satisfy the 3 need questions. And the 3 need questions are, 1, is it truly a need? And whether it's a need or not means it's something that if you don't purchase it, it's going to negatively impact your family's health or welfare. Secondly, is the best route? Is this the best value? And then how are you going to pay for it? And then we also have the tools that we just reviewed, particularly the cash flow analysis and a potential savings analysis, where we put it all together and we see where we could potentially save money so we can get our financial house in order. And then the third area is to sell stuff to create a change in debt and cash flow. And selling stuff makes sense if you have a bunch of stuff you don't need, you don't use, you don't want, etc. But it will not make a difference unless you unless you meaningfully either change your debt situation or you change your spending habits too. Selling stuff isn't a good long-term solution because you only have so much stuff to sell. All right, in our next episode, we're going to talk about debt and credit. Thanks for listening.